Any good alcoholic, it's my mission in life to convert others. So that's why Zymo and I are going to give this presentation this evening. We call it beer hacking, which is basically just a tinkerer's guide to making beer. The philosophy behind it is you don't go over to Best Buy and buy a pre-made computer. At least the people in this group don't. You don't pay somebody else to make a little web page. You do it yourself. So why are you paying 10 times the actual cost of making a beer to buy crap at the gas station? That's not my sound effect. That's the storm coming. Okay. So one of the best quotes regarding beer comes from Benjamin Franklin, a true scholar and a patriot, and he was very pro-American. You can put his name on your list. Is it already? Is he pro or anti? Okay, good. All right. Beer is living proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy. So as I said, it is our nature within this group to hack things. So why not hack your food, hack your beer? There was a presentation on hacking the mind-body connection, hacking AK-47s. So let's do some hacking on some beer. One of the other reasons for doing this, if you take your time out of the equation, it will save you a bundle of money. The ingredients to make beer are dirt cheap. The time that it takes to make the beer is not. However, as we'll talk about in another slide, a way that you actually can make it economical. The other thing is, some of us live in areas where, let's just say it's variety deficient when it comes to beer. All you've got is 2 gas stations, and you got a choice between Beast or Bud. Well, and the light. Yeah, toilet water. Eau de toilette. So, we'll start off by talking about the legality of making your own beer. First and foremost, neither of us are lawyers. So take what we say with a grain of salt. Do your own research. However, I can point you in the right direction. United States Code 26 exempts homebrew from taxation up to 100 gallons per adult in the household. But it still doesn't necessarily make it legal where you live, because local ordinances trump the federal tax code on this. This is a tax law. It is not because the issue with beer, and the reason why you can't go into one state and drive across the state line with beer that you bought is because the tax was for the state that you purchased it in. So it's all about making sure they get their money. So this is simply a tax exemption. So as an example, Alabama technically still says it's illegal to brew your own. However, there are quite a few homebrew supply stores in the state of Alabama. And everybody apparently is patronizing them because they're still in business and they've been there for quite a while. There's currently a petition that's being circulated through beertown.org to try to get it on the ballot so that they can have a constitutional amendment which says that homebrew becomes legal instead of just one of those secrets that, you know, I guess it's kind of like prostitution, you know, if they don't catch me, I'm not going to, yeah, it's just one of those dirty little secrets. It may be illegal, but it still happens, right? Beertown.org is a good resource. It's run by the American Home Brewers Association. Simo, you got anything to add on this one? You got any beer left? Little? Okay. Well, let's get into the economics of it then. By the way, who's getting tired of watching us drink and you not drinking? Okay, so we can start forming some lines. Not Larry, you're going to man the... Okay, so make sure you go around the outside. We will give samples, not full cups. If we gave full cups, then very few people would actually get enough. We have apple vine, and we have pumpkin spice ale over here, and then we have red ale, which is very similar to a fat tire. You will have to have proof of age over 21. There's right there. Right there. Okay. Okay, so come on up. Go around the outside. Johnny X, this means you. Go around the outside. Bastard. Okay, so the economics of it. You can get started making your own brew for around $60 worth of equipment and a few cases of saved up bottles. Everybody knows somebody who's got a bunch of beer bottles laying around because they're too lazy to take them to the recycling bin. Yes. Sure. Want me to drop it down? Okay. Pardon our interruption. We're having technical difficulties. See how that is. Okay. For the red ale, if you can go around the back side because we're actually going to have a demonstration right where you're standing. Is that good, Some Ninja? Okay. All right. So back to the economics. It'll cost you approximately $60 worth of equipment and a few cases of saved up empty bottles to get started. Now that doesn't mean you're going to have the really good equipment. It means you're going to have a starter kit of equipment. Actually, you could get started for a little bit less, but we won't go there. Well, actually, we will later. 1 5-gallon batch. That's your typical size when you brew, is going to yield approximately 48 12-ounce bottles of brew. The ingredient cost for each batch averages somewhere around $35, depending upon what your recipe is. There are a lot of different types of ingredients that can go into different batches of beer and cider. Some are going to be a lot cheaper than $35, and some are going to be a lot more expensive. What do you think is the most expensive batch you've ever brewed, ingredient-wise?
$70, $80.
$70, $80 for a single batch worth of ingredients. Depreciating the cost of equipment across 5 batches. So let's say you had to buy new equipment every 5 batches, which is crazy because you wouldn't. That would still work out to around 94 cents per 12-ounce bottle of beer. So you go to a bar, and what are you going to pay for a bottle of beer? Well, if it's piss, you're going to pay $2, $2.50 a bottle. Okay, but, well, if you're in New York, $12? 13? Okay, yeah. So, and if it's a craft beer, which, let's face it, if you're going to make your own beer, it's going to be the good craft beer. So a comparable beer would probably cost you somewhere around $6 a bottle if you were to go out and buy it in a bar. And here you see you can make it for about 94 cents, including the equipment. However, if you consider the cost of your time, it'll never come out cheaper unless you can brew a whole year's worth of beer in one batch. So if you get the equipment to make a 100-gallon batch, then yeah, you don't invest a whole lot of time in it at all.
There's not a whole lot of extra time that's necessary to brew a 100-gallon batch versus, say, a 5-gallon batch. So all you got to do is have the equipment.
Gallons to boil. That's
just got to have the equipment. But the time sink, the biggest time sink is in the batch itself, not within the size of it, if you have appropriate equipment. Now, I've never brewed a 100-gallon batch in a single go, so that's kind of hard to do.
Yeah, you buy the equipment to do 100-gallon batches, and you're kind of starting to compete with a microbrewery.
You've gone semi-pro.
You may as well open up a restaurant. Exactly, which will really pay for it quickly.
Now you're talking.
So let's talk about the basic methods of making your own brews. We have the beginner extract kits, and we have a saying, friends don't let friends buy Mr. Beer. Mr. Beer is equivalent to brewing what opening a can of Boyardee beef ravioli is to cooking. So if that's as sophisticated as you can get with your cooking, well, maybe Mr. Beer is it. But then again, maybe you should go back to using your Fisher-Price laptop and playing My Little Pony online. Do what? Yes, someone brought one for us to give away as a prize. So if someone really wants to get into it, and the thing is, it's cheap, and it's extremely simple, but the quality is also very low. It's about the same equivalent quality of a can of Chef Boyardee beef ravioli, which, hey, sometimes you're in the mood for crap. Not when it comes to beer, though, for me. Then we have a partial boil extract. So this is the method for people who like to cook, but don't consider buying a box of cake mix to be cheating. So that's the method that I actually do most of the time. And then Zymo here is going to talk about the other two methods because he's even more of a snob and goes for those.
I tend to go more for the full boil extract. That's a little more for those that are on the serious side of trying to figure out how the beer tastes and what's wrong with it or what's right with it and things like that. It takes more time, more equipment, or more expensive equipment to make it, and is analogous to people that want to be serious about cooking a meal, but they don't want to make every single part of their meal from scratch. You're still going to cook most of it yourself, though. Now, all grain. This is, as the slide says, for the purist that considers Betty Crocker to be a no-good tramp. Plain and simple. This is, but there's nothing quite like the pride of being able to say, I made this beer myself from scratch. I went, got the raw grain, I mashed it, I cooked it, I did the whole thing. Here's the end product. Kind of like when you built that laptop by yourself, right? From pieces. That's the good analogy that goes there.
Yep. The next thing to keep in mind is that cleanliness is next to drunkenness, because what is the primary catalyst in fermentation? It's yeast. Yeast is a bacteria. Well, guess what? Staphylococcus is a bacteria too. So you don't want those two in your beer. You only want the yeast. Fermentation is nothing but setting up a gigantic petri dish. You want to make your bacteria grow. You want to make your bacteria live and thrive. So sanitization is the key. There are two main parts to sanitization. First, you have to thoroughly clean every piece of equipment that's going to touch your beer. That means your finger. Yes, I'm looking at you. Yes, you can go across. It also means that if you're going to stir it with a spoon, that you need to clean the spoon. When you get a thermometer so that you can check the temperature of it, you need to make sure that your thermometer has been sanitized as well. Every single thing. The pot that you boil it in, the fermenter that you stick it in, the airlock that you're going to do. Every single bit of it has to be clean. But just cleaning it with hot water and soap is not enough. You also need to use a sanitizer. Not Larry has just placed an acid-based sanitizer, it's called Star San, into his carboy, which is the fancy name for a big glass jar that you put your formula in.
This has been cleaned and sanitized.
Yes, we were commenting on how wonderfully clean looking your carboy is. It looked brand new. Yeah. Just get your wife to stop drinking it all. In that order.
He brews a lot of it.
Yeah. He's got 3 batches going on. Is that a brand new carboy? Okay, that's the first one you bought. Okay. So, anyway, it's an acid-based sanitizer. It's actually pretty cheap to get. It's called Star San. They sell it at the homebrew supply stores. You can get it online. It's like $12, $14 for a
Very large
for
bottle.
a good
Yeah.
sized bottle that'll last you for. Yeah, how much was that? Was that the $8?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was $8, and that's good for probably about 20 batches.
I can get about 5 or 6 times more than that for about twice the money,
Yeah,
for
double
15
price.
bucks.
So it's good. It's good and cheap. So, but anyway, yeah, you can actually just put the stuff on top of the foam, but it's well, Zymo here says, oh, you don't have to worry about getting the foam out. I still go ahead and make sure the foam
Actually-
bubbles all.
You should leave the foam in there. You should leave it in there. Everybody freaks out about it. I'm going to put my beer on top of that. It's going to ruin the taste of it. Absolutely not. Been doing it for years. You go on top of the foam. The way you think of it, if you clean everything correctly, then it should already be almost sanitized. The acid sanitizer is your insurance. That's your insurance policy that you're taking out on your beer to make sure that if I miss something, if I didn't quite catch something, this is going to take care of it for me. This is going to clean it as well as make sure that it's sanitized, because the acid does help with actually some of the cleaning process if you miss something. So it's insurance. It's your insurance policy. No, absolutely not.
So, and the final thing to remember on the cleanliness. Oh, sorry. What was the question?
No, the acid he was talking about killing the yeast.
Yeah. Right. No, the acid is certainly safe for the yeast. And finally, contamination can come from anywhere. If it's not airtight, it's not safe. So that's why we use a thing called an airlock or a bubbler to keep any contaminants from coming in from the air. So now we're going to do a little hands-on demonstration. We're going to go through a starter batch of the apple vine, which is what I have in the kegerator over here.
Just
And
how easy is it to brew a batch of this, Scott?
It's so easy that an old fart and his 2 kids can do it. Oh, actually.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
2 kids.
Yeah,
And how old are you guys?
So a couple of teenagers. So
15 and
a
14.
15-year-old and a 14-year-old. So they're going to put together the ingredients for a batch of apple vine. The ingredients are just as simple as an extract. This is basically a 9.5% alcohol by volume. So nice and very, very nice and stout apple cider. It uses a champagne yeast, so it comes across very dry. But depending upon how far you ferment it down, you can retain a lot of the sweetness to it. It's very simple. You take 5 gallons of pasteurized, no sugar added apple juice. It can be from concentrate, but it needs to be all apple juice. So that means no juicy juice, because juicy juice is 100% juice, but it's not all the juice that it's labeled. It's usually grape juice mixed with whatever other flavorings that they want. So here we have actually just a hair over 5 gallons of Walmart, Sam's Choice apple juice from, and what was the total cost for the apple juice? $13.75 tax included for a little over 5 gallons of apple juice. Then we have 2 pounds of corn sugar. How much does 2 pounds of corn sugar cost from the home brew supply store? $3. So we're up to, we'll go ahead and round it up to $17. Okay. 1 packet of Montrachet yeast, it's 49 cents at the home brew store down the road.
Ouch.
I know. So we're up to $17.50. So yeah, the average batch cost is actually under 20 bucks, and you're going to make 48 to 50 bottles of this stuff out of a single batch. That's not Corona. Not Larry is holding a not Corona. So, what makes this so simple? There's no cooking involved. This is literally just fermenting some very sugary apple juice. Now, the other thing to remember is this is corn sugar that we're using. It's not table sugar. So you have to go get the corn sugar from a or from a homebrew supply store. There is another way to actually use table sugar, And Zymo will get into that when we start talking about adjuncts. So it is possible to hack it and use regular table sugar. The difference between the two is that it's a more complex molecule for table sugar, and it's harder for the yeast to actually break it down. So the yeast kind of starves out because it has to work too hard to do the conversion. For those of you who aren't intimately familiar with how yeast works, yeast has a very simple purpose in life. It consumes sugar, and it craps out alcohol, and it burps out CO2. So, gee,
Well stated.
What are the two things that you want in beer? Alcohol and carbonation. Wow, that's a match made in heaven. Yeah, the other thing is the apple vine is great without carbonation. You can drink it still, or you can force carbonate it, or you can do some other things that'll allow to have natural carbonation in it. So why don't you go ahead and start making the batch of apple vine while we continue to talk here. Yeah. Well, why don't you just stay down low and do it in front of the table here? And will the camera pick them up? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Just put it right here in front of us. Well, hang on now. I mean, this brings up a very good point. It's not alcohol yet. It's apple juice.
Completely legal.
So depending upon where you are, the definition of an alcoholic beverage is going to vary based upon what the actual alcohol content is. NyQuil has got alcohol in it, and that's legal for a child to consume. Listerine has got alcohol in it, and it's legal for a child to purchase Listerine. So check and see what level it is. But I guarantee you that we're not going to have anywhere near that much alcohol before the end of this presentation is done, because the yeast is not going to have time to actually work.
In most places, it's legal for these guys to make it, just not to drink it.
But not production. Yeah, production is completely different. So, okay, so what they're going to do here is we need to actually get the sugar dissolved into the apple juice really well. So they're going to pour half of a bottle into the carboy to begin with, and then they're going to pour some sugar into it. It is sugar. It's not cocaine, even though it kind of looks suspicious to me. So better not see any of that going in your nose.
Quit sniffing that.
All right. So and then once they pour some sugar into it, they're going to cap it up, shake it up really well to get the sugar dissolved in it. Pour that in, and then repeat for the next bottle. So while they're doing that, and that's only going to take them about 5 to 10 minutes. So again, it's really a super simple one. We'll go on into the partial boil. It's a hybrid between an all extract and an all grain. It's great for those with limited time and or resources, which having a 3-year-old is me. That's why I do the partial boil. Zymo doesn't have kids, and he's not married, so he actually has free time and money.
That's arguable.
Yeah, okay. More than me. So the key things, you don't need a 5-gallon kettle. It takes a lot less time to bring 3 gallons of liquid to a boil than it does to bring 5 gallons. Let's go back to that whole economics. If you could do a 100-gallon batch at once, then your time would actually work out okay. Well, how long is it going to take to bring 100 gallons of water to a boil?
Or what do you have to bring it to a boil quickly?
Yeah, how big is that? Yeah, I mean, it's a gigantic kettle. You're going to have a...
That's a hell of a propane burner.
You have to have a bonfire just to bring it up. So, and the other thing is lots of ready-made kits are available with the recipe already laid out for you. So it's just like going online, picking out a recipe for a chicken casserole that you happen to feel in the mood for, and buying the ingredients and making it. So it's very, you're still getting your hands involved in the process of making it, and the quality is superior to anything you could buy in the store. If you follow the instructions, even if you screw up a little bit, you're going to end up with a better beer than you could buy at the store. Problem?
Yeah.
Okay.
Problem taken care of.
Oh, yep. Ah. Your turn.
All right. For the more advanced brewer, there is the full boil. There are certain little things when you start to get serious about your beer and you want to go have the beer judges taste it and critique it and pick it to death, and yes, they will do that, and it's very humbling the first few times that they do. When you don't have time, you can do what's called a full boil extract brew. You're going to have, let's see, if we're going to make a 5-gallon batch, we're probably going to start out with about 6 gallons of water. Hence why we need a 7.5-gallon kettle. Boil 6 gallons of water and tell me that it doesn't need more room than 6 gallons. Of course it does. Hence 7.5 gallons minimum. Thank you, sir. There are, once again, all kinds of ready-made kits. When I don't have time to do an all-grain batch, I take absolutely, there's no shame whatsoever in doing a full boil extract batch. You can make incredibly good beer that even the beer judges can't tell is really extract, as long as you do it correctly. There's some things that happen. Sometimes you can get what's called caramelized extract, things like that the beer judges pick out. That's how they know you brewed an extract. If you do it with a full boil, full water volume, they're less likely to figure this out and know what's going on. So it's a great way to cheat yourself to an amazing beer if you don't have the time. I probably, I'm going to go with somewhere about 2/3 of the beer that I brew, and I've been doing it for over a decade now, is going to be full boil extract. The rest will be all grain. The quality will be superior to anything you're going to buy in the store if you're doing it right. Unless you screw something up badly, freshness cannot be substituted. And that's something you're always going to have when you homebrew and do it correctly, or even close to correctly. It's going to be so fresh and there's nothing like it. Next slide. All right, then we've got all grain. Remember, Betty Crocker is a no-good tramp.
Flat.
All right, this is the purest method when the very best is barely good enough. This is when you want to be able to say, I made this product myself, I went and got the grain, I mashed it, I crushed it, I ordered the bill, I did the whole thing. This is the end product of it. It's that satisfaction of when you bought every single stinking part for that laptop and built it yourself. Same thing. There's just a certain satisfaction that you get from doing something like that. Now, there's some other really neat things about doing all-grain beer. Raw grain is at least half as expensive as buying extract, okay? So much cheaper. Now, well, that's back to that whole time thing. How much is your time worth? It's a labor of love. So, we can argue about the time thing on that. But it can be very time intensive. If you've really got your whole act down, you're going to take 6 hours, probably minimum, to do it. If you don't, you're going to go 10. I've seen it go 12 or even 14 before for an all-grain batch. That's a lot of time. That's a big day. It's a long day to do it. You're going to need some extra equipment to do this.
Hang on, let's not scare them. Remember that part of brewing beer is drinking while you brew it.
If you ever have a problem while you're brewing, we have a little axiom that we like to say: relax, don't worry, have a home brew, drink it. This is an extremely high-tech mash container, as you can all see. I'm sure no one's ever seen one like this. They've never seen anything like this. You can go buy something that's this cheap and turn it into a mash tun if you want to brew all grain, which is some of the specialized equipment that you've got to have. Okay? This is going to be the container that you take your raw grain and you convert the starch into sugar in, okay? So this is how low-tech it can be. This is how simple it can be if you want to do something like that. All right, now, because of how the process works, and we're not going to get into all the specifics of it, if you're going to do what's going to end up to be a 5-gallon batch, you're going to need probably at least a 10-gallon kettle, because after you finish pulling all your sugar off this, after you've mashed it, you're going to have somewhere in the area of 7.5 gallons of stuff that you're going to have to boil down to about 5 gallons. With that much volume, when it boils, you're going to need extra room in that kettle, so you're going to need about a 10-gallon kettle. A 10-gallon kettle looks like this. It ain't cheap, but it's purty.
It really doesn't work on a stovetop either. So so I still do my brewing on a stovetop. I have not upgraded to the banjo burner or the propane burner. That's on my Christmas list for this year, so that I can move into the next phase of my brewing career.
All right, now I can already see people are out there. They're thinking, man, why do I want to do this? Well, this group already gets most of that anyway. But there's still going to be some people that are going to say, I just don't have the time. Why do I want to do this? What's going on with that? Well, there's a general rule with beer. The lighter a beer is, the harder it is to make, because there's less to hide behind. There's less color. There's less flavor. There's less of everything. So to make a lighter beer that's lighter in color and lighter in taste, you have to make it correctly, you've got to brew it better. There's less for you to cheat with, so to speak. All right? If you brew all grain, you have a degree of control that you can exert over your product that you simply will never have with any type of extract brewing, including full boil extract. All right? So you're going to get a quality out of this. You're going to be able to exert complete control once you master the technique and figure out what's going on over every aspect of that beer, the color of it, the taste of it, the thickness, the mouthfeel of it, every single bit of that you're going to be able to control when you brew all grain versus the other methods that we've discussed today. Yep.
So we'll talk about some of the starter equipment to get you going. Partial boil, and actually the apple vine that we're making here is even less because it doesn't require quite as much of the stuff. So one of the things that you can get is a 6.5 gallon ale pail. This is an ale pail with a spigot on it, which is also known as a bottling bucket, but you can still ferment in it. These will cost a little under, somewhere between $15 and $20 a piece at the homebrew store. Has an airtight lid, has a hole in it so that you can put your airlock on it. And like I said, it's got the spigot at the bottom. It's $1 or $2 cheaper for the one that doesn't have a hole for the spigot. You're going to have 2 buckets. You need one as a fermenter, and then you need one to be able to move your beer into to do the bottling. Because you don't want to open the spigot up on your original batch because it's got all that dead yeast sitting at the bottom, and that'd be kind of chewy and nasty. So you're looking at, let's go ahead and round it up, say $40 for a couple of ale pails.
How much does a carboy like that cost, Scott?
They're going up in price. It's like, yeah, they're like $30-40 for a good for a 6.5 gallon carboy. So they're nice to work with, but we're about to get to the point where alcohol may start to be created. They're adding the yeast. Does that include the lid? Okay, yeah, I was saying about $15 to $20 for these with the lid, and then $1 or $2 cheaper for the one without the spigot. So, They're adding to this, and they're getting ready to put the airlock on it, and that's all they have to do for the next 45 days. So as you can see, even if all you have is a dormitory room, you don't even need a stove. You don't need to cook anything. So to make the apple vine, you just need a big carboy or a fermenter and the ingredients. The next thing you would need would be an airlock. Should have one of those in here. Did you bring one?
No airlock.
Well, they've got one they're getting ready to put on. Yeah. Where's your airlock? Oh, okay. Yeah. The reason why for the apple vine we're putting vodka instead of water into the bubbler, basically what you've got is you've got a little mechanism, and you put an upside down cone over a pipette that allows the air to come up, and when gas escapes, it goes through that, and the bubble comes out through the water. But since this is a 45-day, yeah, there we go. Now you've got an actual picture of it. Unfortunately, over a 45-day period of time, your water will evaporate. So you use vodka, cheap vodka, and it'll not only keep it from evaporating, but it'll help keep it sterile.
And if any of it gets in.
Yeah, if anything gets in, then all you've done is increase the alcohol content, right?
Yeah, if your stuff gets too cold, it'll actually pull back through. It'll suck back the wrong way. They call it thermocycling. It'll pull it back the wrong way. So what are you doing if you've got vodka in there? You're just making a stronger brew. That's great. That's going to kind of vary. Depends on the recipe and what you got, and it depends on the your ambient temperature where it's being stored. The biggest reason you're the biggest reason you're going to see that happen is when you see a big rapid temperature fluctuation change. Okay, like it was 82 yesterday and then it's 42 today, something like that. That's where you're going to see it thermocycle and pull stuff back through.
Yeah, consistency is what you want more than a specific temperature. So as long as you can remain at a consistent temperature, it'll be a lot easier to control. Yes, John. Every kit comes with more caps, and there is a capper. So if you take a look on the list here, you need to buy a capper. Would you open up that Mr. Brew? There's actually a capper in the top of it. So, is that bag open?
It is, actually.
Why don't you recap? Okay, we're going to demonstrate how easy it is to cap a bottle. Let's grab one of the not Corona bottles. Yeah, even a drunkard old man can.
Put out, normally you would do this from your pail.
Well, actually, that's what I do when I share. Is I just go ahead and pull it straight out of the keg because it's already carbonated, and then I cap it. So all he has to do is put it on there. There's a magnetic tip.
That never happens.
Never happens, right? And so you simply put it around the neck of it, and you squeeze it down, and now you have a capped bottle of apple vine. Yeah, yeah. So's everybody in the front row. So. Okay, so an airlock we went over. An auto siphon or a racking cane. Zymo has one here. What you do is you stick this into your kettle. When you transfer from one container to another, until it's the bottling time, you never use the spigot at the bottom, because what you're trying to do is get all of the crap to stay at the bottom that's settled out of it. This is an auto siphon. You put it in, and then you pull it up, and it starts the siphoning process. you put some 3/8-inch tubing around the end of it, or is that half-inch?
Probably.
Yeah, it's a half-inch one.
This is
Anyway,
the big boy.
most of them are 3/8. The one with the apple on it is apple vine.
This is the coolest kind of hydraulics ever, because instead of hydraulic fluid, it's booze.
Yeah, booze. So anyway, that'll get it going, and that way you can get it into the next container. A strip adhesive thermometer, just so that you can keep track of what temperature your fermenter is fermenting at. Because just because it's 71 degrees in the room that you've got your fermenter, it doesn't mean that what's inside the bucket is 71 degrees. Because as part of the process of the conversion of sugar to CO2 and alcohol, it releases heat. So it will often be 2-3 degrees higher than the ambient temperature of the room.
Yeast generates a lot of heat when it parties and,
All that friction.
does all that stuff
We went
and
over
makes the
capper,
alcohol.
And then also a brush to clean your equipment with. Because as you can see, you can't fit your fingers down inside the carboy to the very bottom. You need something that's going to let you get all the way to the bottom and get it cleaned out. For partial boils, you need a 3-gallon or larger stainless steel soup pot. You do not want to use aluminum. If you use aluminum, it will react with the yeast, or with the, not the yeast, but with the sugars in a bad way. It'll actually eat the coating off the inside of the aluminum. Something about the way the electrons react. You need a gigantic spoon so that you can stir your kettle of goodness. And you need a heat source. A stove will work, but a propane burner, like a side burner on a grill, is really good. Or you can get, if you find somebody at a yard sale or on Craigslist that is selling a turkey deep frying kit, the burner out of that is what you want. 90% of those use aluminum pots, so you'd probably get it and throw the pot away. But the burner is actually what you want. And another advanced piece of equipment is a hydrometer. Hydrometer. Okay? So what a hydrometer does, or a hydrometer, if you're from or Canada, excuse me. If you're Canadian, it's hydrometer. Yeah, okay. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yes. So what a hydrometer is going to do is it's going to measure the density of a particulate in your liquid, specifically the density of sugar. Because there are two main reasons why you want to know what the density of the sugar is in your batch. Number one is if you measure it before you start fermentation and you measure it after you start fermentation, you can calculate how much sugar got converted to alcohol. Then you can tell what the proof of your brew is. That's one. The other is that some of the more advanced recipes or processes don't have you ferment for X number of days. They have you ferment until the specific gravity gets to a certain level. This is a good example, the apple vine. The first batch that not Larry made, it didn't ferment quite all of the sugar compared to what a typical batch was. And his wife says, "Ooh, I like that. That's really good." The second batch, he went and stirred it up a little bit about 15 days into it and reactivated the yeast, and it converted a lot more. And then his wife said, that's a bit more stout. If you use the hydrometer to take samples and to measure it, you find out what your favorite batch has for a specific gravity at the ending, and then you simply allow it to go until it gets to that point, and you take it out of fermentation. So that allows you to have even better control because, again, one of the variables is temperature. The way that you can get your sample, this is called a thief. Some people just go ahead and call it a wine thief, but it's a thief. You put this down into the carboy or your fermenter, and it has a little mechanism on the bottom which releases a stopper. So the liquid will come up to the level, that you drop it down to, and when you release it from the floor of the fermenter, it'll close it up and stop it and allow you to bring the liquid back out. Then you can take it and put it into a testing tube. Then you take your hydrometer and you put it in the testing tube. So it allows you to take your reading much easier than trying to do it inside the carboy. Not only that, if you were to drop a hydrometer into that carboy, how are you going to get the thing out? You're not. Another thing that you would want is a glass carboy. The reason why, this is food-grade plastic, which is good, but one of the problems with food-grade plastic, besides the fact that you don't want to let babies crawl into it, according to the warning label on the side, is that if you use any kind of an abrasive cleaner on it or a brush, you're going to tear away that outer layer, which is food-grade. So then you're going to end up getting polychlorinated biphenyls into your brew. So you use this one as little as possible, and you have to replace your, if you go with the plastic ale pails, you have to replace them on a somewhat regular basis.
Semi-frequent, yeah.
Semi-free. It depends on how often you're brewing. But basically, once it's no longer smooth, when you start getting scratches, it's just like with Teflon for your nonstick pans. Once it starts to get scratches, you got to get rid of it and you got to replace it.
Yeah, while on the subject of that, the magic eraser is the magic elixir for cleaning plastic like this. You'll get your little magic eraser over at Walmart or something like that. Best thing in the world to clean plastic. Won't scratch it the same way everything else does. It'll clean it almost like new.
Another thing to jump up to the higher level is a bigger kettle. Like I said, I use a 3-gallon, or actually I've got a 4-gallon kettle. He's got the nice big 10-gallon. A propane burner. Like I said, I'm so ready to get off of the glass smooth. Do what?
Here. No. People were just having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah. Hey guys, can we stop the extra conversation so we can get through this? Because people are trying to listen to this, and not you, Al. Yeah. Take it outside. Another thing would be a dial or a digital thermometer with a 1-degree resolution, just so that you can get a little bit more exacting when you're cooking. An immersion work chiller. Why don't you bring out Chillzilla? So the tail end of the process is to take your wort that's been boiling at a couple hundred degrees, and you want to drop it down to room temperature as quickly as possible. So a nice way to do that is to run cold liquid through a heating or through a cooling coil and let that absorb all the heat. And
it's kind of like a wonderful physics experiment, isn't it, Scott?
It is.
We run cold water through the bottom, take it up to the top. We run hot out of the kettle into this. Hot gets cooled by the cool as it comes up. Cool comes up, gets hot. What's heat do? Does it rise? I believe it rises.
Heat rises.
Heat rises.
Heat also goes to cold sources.
So, hot goes in, gets cool, drops to the bottom. Cool comes in, gets hot, rises up to the top. It's a wonderful little physics experiment. It can drop your stuff down to where you don't have to cool. You're going to drop this straight into something like a carboy after it's been boiling, just by running it through something like this.
So,
very cool piece of equipment.
How many of you are familiar with the Food Network's show Good Eats? Okay, how many of you watched Alton Brown make home brew? Yeah, he did one very, very, very bad thing that both of us just cringed thinking about. He went to the grocery store and bought 4 pounds of ice and added that directly to his beer to cool it down, instead of using spring water or some other type of filtered water. Anybody who's ever bought a bag of ice and found a frozen bug in it, can certainly see why you really wouldn't want to add unfiltered water that's been frozen to your beer. Yes, sir. How much is a Chillzilla?
This is going to go somewhere nowadays, and the price has gone up
For the copper.
everything else. It's going to go somewhere between 165 to 185.
Like I said, you can start cheap, and there's no end to how much you can continue to add to your equipment and the sophistication.
Yeah, how fat is your wallet? How much do you want to spend?
Yeah, there you go.
You just got to bend it exactly like this to make it work correctly.
And of course, the ultimate in the upgrades, or to some people, would be the kegerator. So, as you can see, this is not a store-bought kegerator. This is a conversion. That is a $149 dorm cooler, a dorm refrigerator from Best Buy. That's before the $25 coupon that I got. So I really only paid $125 for it. And then the draft tower to go onto it was another $90 for 2 taps. Then you have to buy the kegs. We don't use the typical kind of keg that you'd get down at the beer store and take to your frat party. The evolution of soda dispensing has been a very good thing to the homebrew industry because what we use are Cornelius kegs. There's one right there. If you take a look at it, is that a Pepsi one or a Coke? Basically, Pepsi and Coke no longer dispense their beverages in Cornelius kegs. What they use are boxes of premix. So all they have to do is add the CO2, and there it goes. So they had all these surplus stainless steel 5.5-gallon Cornelius kegs. And you can find them on eBay. You can find them at the homebrew stores. They'll go anywhere from $20 if you know somebody who works at the bottling plant that's trying to get rid of them, upwards of, depending on where you are, I've seen them $65, $70 a piece. Yeah, that's pretty stiff. The last one that I got was from somebody who lived next door to a Dr. Pepper plant that was getting rid of all of theirs, and he picked up 5 of them for $20 a piece, and he sold me one of them. So your CO2 bottle and your regulator will probably be the only other big expense. To get a couple of corny kegs and a regulator and a CO2 bottle, and to get it filled, you're looking at probably close to another $100. So for somewhere around $350, you can get the full conversion. And the last time I looked, Costco sells a kegerator without the CO2 bottle and without the kegs for somewhere around $400. So you can make your own. All you need is a hole saw. And the place that I got mine from, kegkits.com, gives you the exact model number of that particular refrigerator and tells you the parts that you need and what size drill bits you need, and has step-by-step photo instructions. Yes, sir, Mr. Al. Uh-huh. So you can keep it in a keg for quite a long. What's the longest you've kept one in a keg?
Oh,
a year?
A year.
Yeah.
At least.
So, I mean, the key to it is as soon as you get it in there, you go ahead and you pressurize it. Okay? So that'll keep it from leaking out. And then as long as you store it in a place that's, not going to be subject to extreme variations in temperature, you should be in pretty good shape.
The biggest key to it is you want to keep air off of it. Everybody knows about when you go and you have the keg where you pump the top of it, right? That pushes air onto it. What's the beer taste like the next morning? Cardboard. Ah. Why? Air. Air is the enemy of beer. It ruins it. It stales it. It makes it taste like crap.
It's not just any air. It's the air around the keg where
As long as you keep CO2 on your beer and keep a proper pressure on it, don't have too much temperature variation, you can arguably keep beer fresh almost indefinitely. Now, do I really usually ever get to the point to where I test the far limits of that? Hell no. We want to drink it before that, but that's the math behind it and the science behind it.
All right.
Okay, now getting into all-grain semi-pro equipment. You can buy when you start getting something like this, a kettle like this, you're going to want to bring this to boil in a fairly short amount of time so that your brew day doesn't extend on far into the night. You're going to want a high BTU propane burner to bring that bad boy up.
Like 75,000 BTU.
Minimum.
Yeah. You can get banjo burners up to 150,000 BTU, I think. Have you seen them above that?
They come above that. The best way to do is buy one and then mod it yourself. Hack it once again, which is our mantra this weekend.
Swap the regulator.
And there's even other fun things you can do with making better propane flow through it. By get your Dremel tool out. Make the propane. Go ahead.
Well, like I said, you can get started for less than $60, but you'll be starting with, if you want to start with the good shit, less than $500. Yeah, I mean, that's not counting the kegerator, but that's a bottling setup. But I mean, that would be a Chillzilla and a good sized kettle. But again, you know, like if you want to do just the, I keep going back to this because this is the your first hit's free.
Yeah.
Right, this is the one that is so simple. Anybody can make it. It doesn't require any cooking or whatever, and it's pretty tasty. How many people have tasted the apple vine? Okay, did you like it? Okay, you saw the preparation. Now that you just wait 45 days, and then you bottle it. I mean, it's that simple. So that will cost you $45 worth of equipment.
Sky's the limit, though. You can buy an $1,800 stainless steel conical fermenter if you want to. Okay, so how much money do you want to spend? That's really the upper limit of it.
Yeah.
All right.
I've put less than, not counting the kegerator, I've put less than $200 into the equipment for mine.
I can't say that.
No. but I've only been doing this for about a year and a half, and he's been doing it for over 10 years. So it's just one of those things of, you know, I've got my wish list of things that I want to get next. So I've got my Christmas list. My birthday's getting ready to come up, so I'm, you know, I've got some more things that I want to get for that. So, you know, I just add things on to my equipment set that I'll be able to use. He's had a lot more time to be able to do it.
Yeah, and I don't have a kid.
And he doesn't have a kid and a wife,
So, anymore.
Yeah, ex-wife. But,
all right, so when we get into all-grain brewing, you'll hear people talk about a hot liquor tank. What is a hot liquor tank? It is quite simply...
Oh, you've got Al's attention now.
Oh, yeah.
L-I-Q-U-O-R, not L-I-C-K-E-R.
All right. It's a very large vessel that holds hot water. Hot water to the brewing process when you're doing all grain is called hot liquor, okay? Mash and ladder tun, that's what we already put up here. That was a nice orange and white cooler. Counterflow wort chiller, right here. We already talked about that. A lagering facility. If you really want to brew a real lager, you've got to hold the temperature of it down, somewhere in the 50-degree range. In most people's houses, I'm going to guess that you do not have your thermostat set somewhere around that range. So you've got to have a special facility, as we call it, to do that. That can be a freezer, a refrigerator, or various other things if you want to get into $1,800 fermenting vessels, things like that. So you can get really crazy with that. Conical fermenter, as we talked about a minute ago, $1,800 buys a really, really nice one.
You can get a plastic one for about $500, though.
The $1,800 is the real Mr. Beer, though. This thing uses thermoelectric cooling, TEC. I'm sure some of the people in this room are familiar with that, also known as the Peltier effect. It uses this to cool it, sort of NASA's little, the way I like to describe TEC to people that don't understand what it is, it's NASA's cooling plant on a chip. That's the best way that I can describe that to people that have no idea what I'm talking about. But you can have single degree temperature control over what you're doing. When you are trying to brew a beer and make it consistent and make it really, really good, having that sort of control over your fermentation environment is what makes it repeatable every time. That's the sort of stuff that the pros use.
All right, next let's get into, let's say you're not going to invest in the keg, that you're going to go with bottling. That's typically where everybody starts. It is one of the biggest time sinks for brewing beer outside of the actual cooking process. It involves more bottle washing than a father of septuplets. You have to wait on the bottles to dry before filling. Well, you don't, but you know that's typically what people do. And they sell these little bottle trees, and you wash your bottles and stick them all on it. And you go in the kitchen, and you got this gigantic tree full of empty beer bottles that are upside down trying to dry. It is the most hazardous method because when you put the little clamper on top, especially if you've been brewing your homebrew correctly, you've been drinking your homebrew while you're doing it, and you can break the bottles. There's a guy at work that used to homebrew, doesn't anymore, and he was telling me about he had one that he called the blood batch because he went to go cap one and got blood all over the place. So that was called the blood batch. However, it is the cheapest method. It's easy to get free empty bottles from your friends. You could probably collect enough bottles for a 5-gallon batch just from the people here right now. And the thing is, it's also the easiest way to share it with your friends. The problem with the kegerator is that if somebody comes over and says, oh man, that's really good, I'd like to take some home, you don't have a bottle, there's no way they can really do it. You know, you pour it into a glass, and then as soon as they get on the road, they're breaking the law. Unless you're in Texas, then you could have a gun and the open bottle. Yeah! So kegging is the... Okay. Kegging, something we've touched on quite a bit already, is the simplest and fastest way to go from a fermenter to your pint glass. It literally takes 2 to 3 minutes to fill up a keg when it's time to do so. It's a little expensive to get started, though. As we were discussing earlier, the conversion kits are somewhere around $100, or you can buy a ready-made one for $300. Now, that doesn't include the cost of the kegs itself and the CO2. The Cornelius kegs, or the soda kegs we were talking about, we'll say the average is somewhere around $40 a piece, and then you need a CO2 bottle and a regulator. A 5-pound CO2 bottle, I got one a little over a year ago, and I think I've done somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 batches through it, and I've still got plenty of CO2 left. So, and it costs $8 down at the gas supply. You go to a welding supply store, and they're the ones who will fill up your CO. Actually, they'll swap your CO2 bottle. The only thing is they have to do a pressure test on it. So if your bottle has got an expiration date stamped on it. So if your bottle has expired, you have to pay for a pressure test to be done on it. Now, you can still do a swap out, but they charge you the extra 10 or 15 bucks to get the pressure test done. It's also the easiest way to force carbonate. When you're going to bottle something, you actually add a little bit of sugar into the batch before you put it into the bottle. That's going to allow the yeast that's been suspended in your beer to kind of reactivate, and since it's capped and under pressure, as it belches out its CO2 and a small amount of alcohol, it will actually add the bubbles in a very natural way of carbonation into your beer. It typically takes somewhere around a week to naturally carbonate your beers. When you have a keg, all you have to do is fit the regulator and hook up your keg to the CO2 bottle. And then there's a process that we call rocking the baby. You can actually take your keg out and you can rock it side to side, and it will start groaning. You can hear the CO2 making its way through the pipes and into the beer itself, and it will infuse your beer with CO2. Now, you can just let it sit in the kegerator for a week, and it'll do it naturally anyway, just by being under pressure. But if you could take a beer out of the fermenter, put it into a keg, force carbonate it that night, and start serving it. Now we're going to get into flavor hacking. So some of the things to realize is that you don't get chocolate flavor by adding chocolate. You don't get coffee flavor to your beer by adding coffee. And you don't get banana flavor by adding bananas. What you do is you change the malts, you change the sugars, and especially you change the yeasts. But here we're going to talk about adjuncts, or basically things that you add into it, other than the yeast itself. So crystal malts are what determines the color, the flavor, the mouthfeel, and they're all going to vary depending upon the varieties. So, what you do is you try a recipe with a certain type of malt, and you get the feel for how it tastes, and then you can try that in other recipes. There are a lot of references that will kind of give you a general idea of what that's going to do to your beer. Go ahead, because I'm a newbie in this area, and he's.
Where are we at? We still at crystal or roasted?
Well, I just talked about crystal, so.
Okay.
I did mention that you don't add coffee or chocolate to make it taste like coffee or chocolate.
Right. So everyone knows the beer that they've had, and they said, "Man, that tastes like chocolate," or "That tastes like coffee."
Well, that tastes like nuts.
Or nuts. As Scott said, there's none of that in there. This is some sort of roast malt, roasted to varying degrees, and coupled with a specific yeast that brings out a certain characteristic with it. When you get into some of the fancy Belgian beers, the Trappist ales, things like that, you'll have people frequently describe certain characteristics of the beer. It was very chewy and had raisin-like notes and things like that. That might be a Belgian biscuit malt. There are probably as many different types of specialty malts available as you can possibly think of or shake a stick at. Okay, there's wheat, there's Vienna, there's even crazy things like smoked malts, such as in a German Rauchbier. And so it's like Disney World. There's all sorts of crazy, stupid stuff that really shouldn't exist, but it does somehow. Sugars. Who likes Budweiser?
No, Maverick drinks Bud Light and nothing but Bud Light.
All right, so the adjunct used in Budweiser is rice sugar. Okay?
Right. When they have the commercials that say we adhere to the 4 ingredients of just having water and malt and barley water, malt, barley, and hops.
And yeast.
Well,
that would be 4.
They don't count the yeast, though. Yeah. So, but their malt comes from rice. So, I mean, just anything that is a carbohydrate can be malted.
All right. Belgian candy sugar is popular in some of the things. Again, to touch on the Belgian Trappist ales, you're going to see it used there. There are also other sugars that can be used. You can use molasses, corn sugar, etc. The important thing to think about when using sugar in beer is too much of any non-malt sugar will make a cidery tasting beer. Now, we made cider tonight, so adding sugar to that is great because cider should have a cidery taste to it, right? Next.
One of the other things that you can add is spices. I have on tap here tonight a pumpkin spice ale. It does not actually have any pumpkin in it. It has the spices that go with pumpkin pie. So it's got nutmeg and cinnamon, basically an allspice type of concoction. It's got some regular table sugar in there as well. But I boiled it, and so when I boiled it, that actually broke down the molecules and made it easier for the yeast to consume. You can also add fruits, but you have to remember that fruit is basically sugar. So what you think is a nice fruity flavor, oh hey, this is orange, I love orange, I'll add a bunch of orange. If you add it before the fermentation process begins, then it's probably going to get converted to alcohol, and so you're going to lose what that flavor is. So the thing is, you have to either add a huge amount if you put it in the very beginning through the fermentation process, and there are reasons why you might want to do that. And then you can add something to the secondary stage. So the way that a lot of people make let's say a cherry wheat beer, is a very popular one that you see with fruit adjuncts, is they will add cherries into the secondary fermentation process. So they let it ferment for a couple of weeks, and then or a week to 2 weeks, and then they move it. All they do is they move it from one fermenter to a second one. It leaves all that tired, it's not dead, but that tired yeast at the bottom. So they've got, a clearer concoction in their secondary, and then they just put fruit in the bottom, and that allows it to absorb the flavor of the cherry. Yes? The natural yeasts that are in fruit are not really the kind of yeast that you want the flavor for your ciders or wines or anything like that.
Folks, I don't see enough people up here for round 2 of Taste Test.
Yeah. Anybody wants more tasting? All right, that's all we take. Okay. All right. Okay, not Larry. Not Larry. Whoa, whoa, whoa. No. You can't, man. No. No. Mm-mm. Where'd not Larry go?
But what's the other agent over there? It's got the beer.
Not Larry. Do your duty. Uh-huh.
Come on.
Okay, so we talked about spices, we talked about fruits. Zymo here is going to talk about Beano. Hey, can we be a little quiet about getting the second round of taste testing?
All right, so who's ever drank light beer from Miller? I know you don't want to raise your hand, but I know you really have, even if you won't. Who's drank light beer from Miller?
I've done it.
Who's done it? I've done it. I've done it. This guy's done it. Okay, so what makes that beer low carb?
Hey, can we keep the extra conversation level down, please?
All right.
Hey, not Larry. Stop conversing with everyone. We're trying to actually finish the presentation. Shut up.
Miller uses a really interesting thing that they pioneered. They started using an enzyme known as AMG, also known as amyloglucosidase. Now, to you and me, that's Beano tablets that you can go buy at the health food store. All right? So if you want to make a low-carb beer, you make your beer, you ferment it, and then you take about 4 or 5 Beano tablets and you drop them into the carboy with it. It'll take a lot of the carbohydrates that were not broken down into sugars, and it will break them down further into sugars. It'll cleave them. The carbohydrates are can easily be turned into sugars with the correct environment. AMG does that. I'm actually making an apple vine right now that I'm hacking with AMG. It's going to be really strong, and it'll be beautiful. I can tell. All right, bacteria. Normally, bacteria is the enemy of your beer when you're trying to brew it. However, there are certain types of beer where bacteria is exactly what you want in it. Examples of this would include some of the German sour beers or the Belgian lambics, such as a framboise or a crick, that many people may be familiar with. If you've ever had somebody have a framboise, it's sort of like a raspberry champagne. And it's very nice, it's very good. You'll see people that do not like beer will absolutely eat this stuff up. I've got one that's been going at the house for about 8 years now. They're considered young until they're at least 3 years old. So mine's about ready to be bottled. Once you use a bacteria with your beer, you should never use that equipment again with any of your normal brewing stuff, because it will be irrevocably contaminated. All right, flavor hacking, yeast. All right, the key to yeast hacking is you got to know the yeast that you're working with and what you can do with it. What can I get away with it? What are the things I can do with it to bend it, to meld it, to make it do my bidding? Most commercial breweries are only going to have 1 or 2 different yeast strains that they use for every beer they make, even though those beers all taste vastly different from each other. If we were to take 5 different batches of beer that were exactly the same, put a different yeast in each one, and have the same conditions for each, we would get 5 distinctly different batches based upon that yeast. Yeast is the signature of a beer, okay? It's and everyone always thinks, oh, it's what you put in it. It's not just what you put in it. It's that yeast that is going to be the actual signature of it. All right, so how do these commercial breweries have all these different yeasts that taste so much differently than each other? They hack their yeast, quite simply. They control the fermentation conditions. They might brew one beer at 65 degrees. They might brew another at 58 degrees. They're going to do different little tricks that they know by knowing their yeast to hack it and make it do their bidding to create the specific characteristics that they desire in that beer. Generally, the most easy way to hack a yeast is through control of your fermentation temperature. Ales, typically like 66 to 70 degrees. That's the normal fermentation temperature for an ale. Lagers, typically like 46 to 54 degrees. And that's where we talked about having a lagering facility earlier. It's kind of hard to come by 46 to 54 degrees in a natural environment.
If you happen to have a subterranean basement,
you might be able to pull this off.
You might be able to pull it off. Another thing that you could do is if you happen to have enough room, you can go buy an old refrigerator, yard sale or Craigslist or something for 25, 50 bucks, and just set the temperature to 46 to 54 degrees. If it's a big enough refrigerator, you can put your fermenter inside the refrigerator.
All right, cool things we can do by hacking our yeast via temperature control. We can have ales that can really masquerade as a lager to all but the most discerning palates, okay? In other words, unless you're a beer judge, you're probably not going to know the difference between an ale and a lager, okay? We can make great lagers at ale temperatures, which is normally not doable. There are cool tricks you can do with that to make some incredibly fine lagers without actually having a lagering facility to do so.
You can set up an evaporative cooling setup in your bathtub. If you happen to have a spare bathroom, spare tub, you can put some water in the bottom of it. You can wrap a towel around the...
or a T-shirt.
Or a T-shirt around the fermenter, the carboy itself, and the wicking action of the water will actually cool several degrees.
And you could refine this further by blowing a fan over it. I typically am able to get 10 degrees lower than ambient temperature through an evaporative cooling method. Water, shirt, fan over top of it. Also known as an Arizona air conditioner.
So, as we were saying, there are processes for basically every issue that you might run into in the brewing process. Creative solutions exist, or they're waiting for people like us to come up with new ones or refine them even better. So, as we just talked about, there was the evaporative cooling during fermentation. Freezing your sanitary makeup water to chill the wort. I talked about Alton Brown and tossing the store-bought ice into his wort to cool it down to room temperature. Just go and buy one of the big fridge packs. This is what I do. I take the fridge packs, 2.5-gallon fridge pack of spring water that's been filtered from the grocery store, and I'll put it in the refrigerator so it's already down to 40-something degrees before I am ready to add it into my, use it as makeup water. You start pouring that in to even 150-degree wort, and it'll be room temperature by the time you get it all in there. So you can cool it, or you can even freeze it. I don't freeze it, but you could measure out the exact amount of water that you need, put it in some old milk jugs that have been sanitized, and when it comes time to use them, cut the milk jug away from it and drop the block of ice into your wort. That would make it even faster. But like I said, for me, just using cold water is fine.
All right. I'm really not going to even get into unsticking a stuck mash. That's sort of a neat thing that I've come up with before that I've done in the process of doing it, but it would take too long to explain.
Yeah.
There are really cool things you can still do. There are kind of hacking techniques with handling your wort, making sure it's sanitary, making sure you're doing other things correctly so that you're getting the desired effect out of it. Equipment cleaning techniques. Let's give an example of that. Okay, so I want to clean this carboy over here. Do I just want to put a brush in there? Let's stop for a second and think about that. What's the surface area of a brush? It's no more than that of the bristles, right? What if I took a sock that was clean and put it over that brush? Well, now I've got all sorts of surface area compared to that brush that I just had, right? I've now got a much more efficient tool to clean my carboy with. That's a cool little method of hacking. There are a million different little things like this.
Afterwards anyway.
It's going to be sanitized after the fact anyway. Yeah, use a clean sock, not one you've just worn.
All right. Okay, so we're at the finale.
La, 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 la.
So some of the resources that you can go to, there are home brewing clubs. Yes, there are clubs for sitting around and drinking beer while waiting for a pot of water to boil. That is my kind of club.
L'chaim.
Homebrew stores. Let me tell you, the people who work in the homebrew supply store are not doing it because they love customer service. They're doing it because they need the discount for all of the supplies that they are using themselves. Also, there are a wealth of books that are out there. Some are even Creative Commons that you can find on the web. But there are some other good resources, and the books are typically priced at a decent level. I mean, you can buy a really good book for $15 or less that will go into the theory behind home brewing and go into an amazing amount of detail about all of the aspects that we've talked about. And, you know, there are also magazines. There's
Homebrew, Zymergy.
Yeah, Zymergy, Homebrew. There's a half a dozen magazines that are dedicated to homebrew. But yeah, Homebrew Club is a good one to get started with. Basically, you just show up, and even if you're not going to brew anything, you can sit around and watch other people and learn from what they're doing. And more than likely, unless you're an asshole about it, they're going to share what they brought with them to consume while they brew the next batch.
I've never been to a meeting yet where something wasn't shared. All right, Music City Brewers is a local club that is, I would say, there are a couple different local clubs. They are the older, more serious club that's been around for a long time that likes to try to build various members up to the point of going to different homebrew competitions. It should be noted while talking about different resources that one of the most popular homebrew authors right now is Dave Miller. Dave Miller is the head brewmaster at Blackstone on West End Avenue.
Which happens to be where Nashville 2600 goes for dinner after most of the meetings. All right, well, does anybody have any other questions? Yes. Yeah, I can't tell you what they are because I just don't know, but yes, I mean, they have events for the wind change from west to east. Okay, so any excuse that they can come up with to sit around and drink beer and boil water. So yeah.
Generally events for days that end in Y.
Yeah. Okay, or even tomorrow afternoon. Yeah. Okay. So the batch of apple vine that we have here, we're going to set it out somewhere so that people can actually see it. The bubbler on it, the airlock, is going to start going up and down like a coffee percolator. and it'll do that by this time tomorrow evening. So we'll have it out where people can actually take a look at it and see just how much air is coming from the process.
Air? Is it air or is it CO2?
It's still air. It's a gaseous form. Okay, the gas. How much fart is coming out from the yeast?
Yeah, once it farts enough, it's all CO2.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody, and enjoy the evening. And we're going to hand it over to Skydog so he can introduce the next person.